A very good afternoon to everyone here. My name is Rohil Vaidya, and I'm a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies and the MC for today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to another ICS Wednesday seminar. Today's seminar is on the topic Decoding Korea's Indo-Pacific Strategy. Before we begin, a brief background for today's seminar. With 2023 assuming particular significance due to India's presidency of the G20 summit and the celebration of 50 years of established diplomatic relations between India and Korea, the stage is set for collaboration and support between the two countries. In light of these events and the enduring friendship between the two nations, we are honored to welcome Minister Sang-Woo Im, who will talk about Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy as the embodiment of the desire to extend their reach beyond their immediate neighborhood. Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy looks to promote a rules-based international order and is based on working with nations that share universal values towards a free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. It emphasizes a narrative of development where Korea will share its experience and knowledge to help countries in the region meet their aspirations of national development and economic growth. This talk will delve into the specifics of Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy, offering valuable insights into its significance and avenues of constructive regional cooperation and prosperity. Today's speaker, Minister Sang-Woo Im, is the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Korean Embassy in New Delhi. He has previously served in multiple Korean missions abroad, including in the United States, Iraq at the Oval Office, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Brazil. He also served as Korea's first ambassador to the Republic of Madagascar from 2018 to 2020. He concurrently served as the coordinator for the Indo-Pacific Strategy Task Force and was in charge of drafting Korea's Indo-Pacific Strategy, released in December 2022. The chair for today's session is Dr. Jitendra Uttam. He is currently an assistant professor at the Center for East Asian Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. His most recent books are The Varieties of Capitalism in Asia, co-authored with David Hunt, published in 2017, and The Political Economy of Korea, published in 2014. He has also published articles in multiple journals, including International Studies and the International Journal of Korean Unification Studies. Before I hand the session over to the chair, I would like to ask the participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All the participants should remain muted during the presentation. Questions can be posted in the chat box during the event, or you can raise your hand during the interactive session. Once called upon, please put your hand down, unmute yourself, and ask your question in a concise manner. Please mention your full name and affiliation while asking your question. With that in mind, I now hand the session over to Dr. Uttam. Thank you. Dr. Uttam?
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. I would like at the outset to extend warm welcome to Minister Im Nam-woo from the Embassy of the Republic of Korea, New Delhi. And he will be speaking, I think it's a first-hand experience because he was also involved in making the report. So I think it is a very important presentation that he will be doing for our benefit. And also I would like to appreciate the efforts of Institute of the Chinese Studies for organizing this event, which is not on China, but on Korea. And I think it is very important to understand because now the multilateral context of the bilateral relationship is very important. And I think in that context, Minister will be throwing light on the micro picture, how Korea is dealing with the new and the emergent strategic architecture that is surrounding the Indo-Pacific. Before Minister speaks, I would like to highlight the macro picture, how the Indo-Pacific, this new strategic reimagination has arrived. What was the need that the earlier concept, Indo-Pacific, Asia-Pacific, has been replaced by the Indo-Pacific. If we want to understand, it is very important to understand how the major developments in the region, they impacted or they forced the Western countries to come up with something different from Asia Pacific to Indo Pacific. So, this reimagination came because the geo-economic focus that was the reality after the end of the Cold War. And the steering organization APEC did well, and the region benefited a lot by converging economic interest. However, in this convergence, countries in the West, they felt a little bit at the disadvantage point because the rise of Asia based on the export promotion of the mass manufacturing goods started to experience massive trade surplus, and the Western countries, they started to witness uh, large bilateral deficit from many East Asian countries. So in this context, in the West, they understood that something has to be done. How to correct the, the, the imbalance in the global economy, which is coming from the geo-economic focus. So countries in the West, they shifted their instance and they started to talk about geopolitics. And as you know, that the geopolitics in Asia has been contested and has been seen many fault lines. So the focusing on the geopolitics started to bring many historical bad experiences of Asian countries to the fore. Also, one other important development, the rise of Asia, among the rise of Asia, the rise of China, and also in the recent times, little bit much more assertiveness from the Chinese side, also contributed to the development of the geopolitics embedded concept into Pacific. At the implicit level, Indo-Pacific also trying to balance a new superpower that is rising in our doorsteps, China. So in this whole reimagination of the international strategic order, I think Korea and India, both countries, because for Korea also China is a neighboring country, is a very close country that the Korean culture, Korean civilization has been attached to. Similarly, India also has a long border with China, and anything that is happening means balancing China, hard balancing or soft balancing is going to impact. However, the, the talk of free and open Indo-Pacific, which is aimed at bringing the rule-based international order. And I think if the Indo-Pacific sticks to this, it is very important for India and Korea to, to participate, to lead Indo-Pacific and maintain its direction towards openness, towards rule-based order. Because there can be situations where Indo-Pacific countries, they may have to deviate a little bit from the set goals. So I think in that context, India-Korea relationship, their cooperation is also very important, and both countries, how they interact with the Indo-Pacific, how they embrace the geopolitical reality that is unfolding in front of us is very important. I think Professor Minister Im Sang-woo will highlight how Korea, which was initially hesitant and ambivalent about the Indo-Pacific, has fully embraced this concept. And I think it is very important. And within the wider framework of Indo-Pacific, there is a much bigger multilateral context to upgrade our bilateral relationship with Korea, which can be a cornerstone to stability in the Indo-Pacific era. So, without losing much time, I would like to invite Minister to share his ideas in depth and illuminate and highlight what clear goals Korea has in this new strategic understanding, which is less local, less regional, and more global. Over to Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction, Mr. Chair, Professor Uttam. I know Professor Acharya, despite the flu, you are here with us. And thank you for all the members of the ICS for providing me this really wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts on Indo-Pacific strategy and what Korea and India can do together in this region. As I was introduced, I'm the DCM, Deputy Chief of Mission of the Korean Embassy here, and I've been here, it's been about 6 months now. Before coming here, I was at the headquarters in Seoul, and I was tasked with heading the task force for the Indo-Pacific strategy. So we were responsible for drafting our Indo-Pacific strategy, which was actually announced at the end of December last year. I think I could share with you my personal experience working in the task force and what the core thinking behind the main elements of our Indo-Pacific strategy, and then see what Korea and India can do to work together to implement this vision of free and open and prosperous in the Pacific. So if I go first, maybe it's just stating the obvious, but Professor Uttam has already laid out the background why Indo-Pacific has become so important to all of us, especially in light of the sea change that we witness in the Indo-Pacific region in terms of the power play, the interests that collide, and so forth. But for us, of course, Korea in the Pacific region is very important. For us, we are an exporting nation. We've become a developed nation thanks to our export strategy. And still, the Indo-Pacific accounts for about 80% of all our exports. And imports too, we have about 70% of all imports come from the Indo-Pacific. And foreign direct investment also, I think more than 60% of Korea's FDI happens here in the Indo-Pacific region. So you can see how much Indo-Pacific is really important for us, especially in terms of our economy. But strategically speaking, also Indo-Pacific region has become more important as we witness this big change in the geopolitical, geoeconomic environments surrounding this region. So with the new governments that came in last year in May, we took the bold step of preparing a comprehensive regional strategy, which is actually the first time in Korea's history. Of course, before there were a lot of regional policies and initiatives. For instance, during the previous administration, we had this great policy called the New Southern Policy. And before, also, we had other various initiatives that mostly actually revolve around resolving the Korean Peninsula issue. But this initiative, this strategy that we came up with is really an embodiment of Korea's aspiration to really take on a bigger role and responsibility in regions beyond our immediate neighborhood. And we have three visions, three pillars, if you can say, and that is freedom, peace, and prosperity. And if you recall, these pillars are not really brand new. Before with the New Southern Policy, we also had three pillars. And back then it was people, peace, and prosperity. But as we came up with our strategy for the Indo-Pacific region as a whole, we thought it very important to touch upon the basic tenet thinking of a foreign policy, with the foundation, and accentuate it at the forefronts. What is the most important thing for us? And I think it was not really that hard to come to the conclusion that freedom, being free, is really the basic value upon which we do our things. We go about doing our business. So freedom, and freedom, it embodies a lot of values and connotations. But basically, by freedom we mean, freedom not to be coerced, freedom which is based on a rules-based international order, to maintain an open and free regional order. And this actually resonates a lot, really strongly with Koreans, because it's thanks to a well-established rules-based international order that Korea was able to develop into a developed country in such a short period of time. So by that token, we do not think that any change of status quo by force, any unilateral change of status quo by force is in any way acceptable. We're opposed to it. And we would like to uphold this rules-based international order and promote it with other partners and friends who believe, who share in our beliefs. And second, peace is the second pillar. And peace, of course, coming from a very dicey neighborhood with North Korea firing missiles left and right. You can understand that peace is really, really important for Koreans. And it's not just, as I said, it's not just a strategy for our immediate neighborhood, but we do think that we can and we will contribute more to the peace of the Indo-Pacific region as a whole. And third is prosperity. We have our distinct development narrative, and we do think that prosperity is very important to realize peace and protect freedom. So Korea will do whatever we can to share what we've come to acquire, our knowledge, our know-how in developing a nation, and also try to maintain an open and transparent and fair economic international order. So those three are the basic pillars that we set up at the beginning when we were working on our Indo-Pacific strategy. And then we thought about the principles of cooperation, one of the basic principles that we'd like to embody in that strategy. And frankly, it was pretty challenging to come up with, fancy new terminologies to describe what principles that we think are important for our strategy, because we were actually one of the latecomers with the Indo-Pacific strategy, and all the other nations have already used up all these nice words. So, but we thought that it's not that important to come up with new fancy words, but what's more important is to actually see what those words really mean to us and to our Indo-Pacific strategy. And we came up with three principles of cooperation. The first is, after a lot of internal debate, we thought inclusiveness would be our first principle of cooperation. Our Indo-Pacific strategy is inclusive. We do not target or exclude a certain nation, and we have an open invitation to all nations who share our values and our vision to participate in realizing this vision of Indo-Pacific. And the second principle is trust. And trust being that we don't see what we're doing now as being this one-time transactional thing. We look at this as being a long-term commitment. We're in it for a long haul, and long-lasting relationships really are built on trust. And third is reciprocity, meaning mutually beneficial. And this also ties into the three basic pillars that I mentioned. We believe in sharing the fruits of maintaining a free and open, prosperous Indo-Pacific, and whatever benefits that we reap should be shared amongst all partners in the region. And that ties into our belief in sharing our experience of national economic developments. So with that, we identified some key priority areas that we would like to work on with our partners. And these areas we call the core lines of effort. And basically there are 9 areas that we identified, and they roughly align with the 3 basic pillars that I just mentioned: freedom, peace, and prosperity. So to give you an example, one priority area is to work together with our partners to establish regional order based on rules and shared norms. That means promoting rule of law. And for peace, for instance, we are thinking of taking our part in enhancing a comprehensive security cooperation, meaning not just traditional security issues, but hard, issues, but newly emerging security issues, which encompass, the pandemic or the food security. And also expanding economic security networks, promoting science and technology cooperation, climate change and energy security. And lastly, we would like to promote tailored development cooperation partnerships. And especially in terms of the importance of the Global South, our Indo-Pacific strategy, it encompasses a large area, landscape of the world. It's not just, it's this India Ocean region, the Pacific Islands, but also the eastern coast of the African continent. So, and we do think we can be reliable partners with developing nations and to promote tailored development cooperation partnerships. So these are pretty much the key features of our Indo-Pacific strategy. And one of the questions that I got asked most frequently is the China question. Everybody was interested. So what does it mean to China? Are you doing this because of ABC, because of China's ABC policies? So, but my answer has always been very consistent. Our policy is not a reactive policy or strategy to a certain nation or a certain trend. First of all, it's a pronouncement of our proactive will, our ambitious agenda to take on a bigger role and responsibility in regions beyond the Korean Peninsula. Of course, there will be a lot of elements that concerns China as we implement our policy, our strategy. But we've stated clearly in our strategy that this is an inclusive strategy, and China actually, we believe, is a very important partner to work together if we are going to realize this vision of promoting a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific strategy in the Pacific region. And the importance that we attach to maintaining a rules-based order. This also, we do think, from our experience, that it's not just good for us, but it's good for the whole international society, including all countries that aspire to become a developed nation. Having a stable rules-based international order promotes innovation. It promotes people's creative thinking, because things are stable, things are predictable, and you don't have to worry about other things. It provides a very stable environment for creative thinking. So with that, I would like to now turn to what Korea and India can do together to implement this Indo-Pacific strategy. As our chair mentioned, this year is very important year for Korea and India, because it marks the 50th anniversary of our diplomatic relations, and it coincides with India's assuming the presidency of the G20. So it's a really auspicious year, not just for India in performing its global leadership duties as the chair of the G20, but also in terms of our bilateral relationship. And there are a lot of advantages to our relationship compared to others, and very distinct, unique features that really show that we are natural partners in every way. I know a lot of people have already heard this story. It's actually it's debated by scholars whether if it's true or not, but there is a record saying that 2,000 years ago, an Indian princess from Ayodhya traveled all the way to Korea to marry a Korean king, the king of Kaya. And that's actually the start of our great relationship, and the descendants of that Indian princess, of the Korean king, they are now one of the biggest clans in Korea, one of the Kims in Korea. And of course, Buddhism has had a lot of impact on our thinking, and the way that also affects the way we look at international relations. I was really struck when I came here to see that the slogan for the G20 summit is "One Earth, One Family, and One Future." And I learned that this came from the ancient Sanskrit script, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. And this actually struck a chord with me, because in ancient times too, this is what Koreans believed in our ruling ideology. It's not just about us, but it's about benefiting all of humanity. That was actually the ruling ideology of the first Korean kingdom that was established about 5,000 years ago, or Gojoseon. And I was surprised that we really share a common outlook on the world. And needless to say, we are the model democracies in Asia, along with Japan. And our economies are one of the most vibrant ones. And very importantly, really we share a common vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. And this, of course, is a natural outcome because we actually, my team actually studied very meticulously the writings, the policies, the speeches actually of India, of Prime Minister Modi, the one that he did in Sri Lanka, in Shangri-La dialogue, as well as other policy statements. So that has been a very valuable reference point for us. So there's a lot of commonalities in in our vision for the Indo-Pacific region. But I do think that there's a gap, in this in what we think the potential are for us and the actual reality now. There is still a lot of room to cooperate between our two countries. And if I can just lay out just a few areas, for instance, I think one of the areas that we can look into is maritime security, obviously. India, EU have always been very active in this Indian Ocean region, but also recently we've also been engaged in maintaining a free and open Pacific region, with your engagement with the Pacific Islands and your interest in promoting naval cooperation with ASEAN countries. And Korea too, we have a really good relationship with ASEAN countries, but also in the Indian Ocean region. We send our Navy regularly to this Indian Ocean region, the Gulf of Aden, especially where we have our naval ship, a destroyer group coming regularly to participate in anti-piracy activities there. So I do think if we can get together, there's a whole lot more that Korea and India can do to promote maritime security. And second thing that I can think of is economic security, such as the semiconductors and other high-end technologies. India has been talking a lot recently about this area with the US and Japan, and I do think Korea too. There's a lot we can do together if we can get our two sides together to have a serious discussion on what our industries can do on promoting cooperation in this critical technology area. And lastly, one other thought would be to promote a so-called mini-lateral engagements. I know India has been at the forefront of this endeavor. India has come up with very creative groupings, such as I2U2, which I think is really ingenious. And Korea also, with our Indo-Pacific strategy, one of the key tools to implement our Indo-Pacific strategy is to promote these like-minded groups, gatherings on particular issues. And for instance, we have the Korea, US, Japan trilateral that it's been around for a while, for about now 30 plus years. And I do think Korea, India, and a third country, if we put together, there's a lot we can do. For instance, India, Korea, Japan, for instance. Why not the three exemplary Asian countries together, or India, Korea, and the US. Recently, Prime Minister Modi had a great successful visit to the US. And actually, a couple of weeks before, our president also had a great visit to the US. And if three countries get together, that could really produce a lot of positive synergistic outcomes. So those three basic, I think, areas I would like to put out here in the open to see more lively discussions and concrete results in India-Korea cooperation. So I think I'll end my presentation here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your very enlightening and very direct talk about Korea's understanding of Indo-Pacific and how uh, India and Korea also in this multilateral convergence can cooperate. You have rightly mentioned three pillars: freedom, peace, and prosperity. And I think they are very essential for the world now, and particularly the Asian countries, because Asia's economic growth has been a very important factor that has converged so many countries and their interest. So I think prosperity is very important in any kind of strategic understanding, and also freedom, that you have very clearly articulated that inclusiveness, trust, and reciprocity, that these three principles, they can be linked with those three pillars. And as you mentioned, that Indo-Pacific also covers large part of global south, and which is at present changing a lot and has a uh, dynamism of its own that is represented by so many other forums and all this, including BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization Association. So Global South is very important arena, and that Indo-Pacific covers. Also, you have briefly touched about the question of China, because many people, they want to understand sometimes that if the Indo-Pacific, because it has a Quad, it has other elements that can be trying to have the hard balancing with the China. So how Korea is going to react? And I think Korea's understanding of the uh, Indo-Pacific and the current international order, that Korea wants to have peace and inclusiveness. I think that's very important. Coming to India-Korea relations, I think you have highlighted three areas: maritime security, semiconductors, and unilateral engagements, or can be trilateral engagements. I think this is very important. And Korea is a major power in the semiconductor. And in the 80s, the semiconductor industry, Korea initiated, and Korea is now a power of its own in the semiconductors. I think India can learn a lot from Korea how to move in this new technology domain, and partnership with Korea can be very beneficial for India. And India's uh, aspiration, I can say, to develop a vibrant semiconductor industry is can be addressed by Korea, by Japan, by Taiwan, all these countries, including the US. I think that is very important. Uh, Also, actually, I lived in Korea and studied, did my PhD. 10 years I was there in Seoul National University. And when you told this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that it's not only because nation state is our creation, but this planet is one, and it is our common responsibility to safeguard. And while I was in Korea, always I understood that there can be many differences between countries, but at the understanding level, at the philosophical level, at the cultural level, I think India and Korea, they are very, very same. The way in India, people, they respect their mother and father, they respect their family, they respect other extended family members, relatives. The concept of group making, what they call Thongwari. I lived in Silimdong for 1 year, and I witnessed how Korean people, they are very good in making groups. Means it's a kind of a collective vision of society, shared prosperity, shared values, and those things in India also we cherish. So I think going forward, India and Korea both, they can cooperate, not only solving our problem bilaterally, but also solving the problem like climate change and all these problems coming up. I think this partnership can be very, very important, not only address our bilateral issues, but the multilateral issues that are now coming into fore. So with this, I think the floor is open for uh, any comment, question that can be addressed by minister, or if anything somebody wants to ask from me, I can also respond to the queries. So floor is open for the questions now.
There are a couple of questions in the chat box, Dr. Uttam. Shall I read them out?
Yes, yes.
So Rahul Robinson, who is a research scholar at the Center of East Asian Studies at JNU, asks, beyond the idea of being natural partners, in the second half of the last century, India and Korea were influenced by the adverse dictates of the Cold War. So his question to Minister Yim is, how do you think that such a probable adverse dictate will not influence the scope of cooperations between these two nations, keeping an idea of the Indo-Pacific interests? Minister Im, would you prefer to take questions in groups, or would you rather answer them one at a time?
No problem. No problem. Well, this is a very interesting question. So obviously, during the Cold War, Korea and India and probably most other nations were influenced by the dictates of the Cold War. It was a structure that nobody was able to free itself out of. We were all influenced by the structure. So, times have changed. It's not the Cold War anymore. There are scholars and other people who say that it's now we're witnessing another onset of a new Cold War. But anyways, as long as we're talking about the dictates of the Cold War, I don't think Korea is influenced or changed by the dictates of the Cold War. But one of the challenges, I think, in implementing the Indo-Pacific strategy is actually the security imperatives, I think. Now, when I was in Korea, and last year especially, and this year too, North Korea was really firing missiles left and right. Wake up in the morning, there's another missile that flew over wherever. And really, if you think about it, it's really a grave, serious threat to the security of not just the Koreans, but of all the region at large. But we were at the forefront, so we could really feel the security threats. But despite that, the thinking behind our Indo-Pacific strategy was that, we instead of being bogged down with our security concerns and hold up, in our neighborhood, it's better for us, or it behooves to actually go outside of our immediate region and take on a bigger responsibility, and that actually in turn can also contribute to resolving the Korean Peninsula conundrum. But the reality is, this security threat is one of the biggest challenges in implementing an Indo-Pacific strategy, and I think it's the same thing for all nations, including India too. You have your own specific priorities, especially in terms of national security. and that would actually take precedence over other less threatening issues. So I guess really we really have to work closely together to implement this vision, despite the security imperatives that we feel, and maybe work together because of the overwhelming need to address the security imperatives that people not people and countries feel in the region. I think that would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister M. The next question is from Nayanima Basu from the ABP Live Network, which is a English news channel in India. She asks, how does Korea see the geopolitical competition in the Indo-Pacific, with the obvious concern being China?
Well, yes, there is competition between U.S. and China, and as diplomats from all over the world, we think this is one of the most important international trend that has set in recent years. But we do think that in light of the efforts that the U.S. and China are making, we do think and we hope that the competition will be a healthy competition and not derailed. And those conscious efforts are being exerted by both U.S. and China. And Korea, of course, we are a close ally of the U.S. We have a strong bond with the United States going back to the Korean War, and that was the background for the nascence of our alliance. At the same time, with China too, we have a really important relationship with China. China is our #1 trade partner, like most other nations. And with China too, we've consistently said that we want a healthy relationship with China, a relationship that's based on mutual respect and mutual regard for the interests that we have. So yeah, so Korea is willing to do what we can in light of our Indo-Pacific strategy to make Indo-Pacific region a better place to be for all our friends and partners in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Im. The next question is from Akshat, who is a research assistant at ICS and a doctoral scholar in Japanese studies. He asks, cooperation between Korea and Japan in the Indo-Pacific is of the utmost importance. Willingness has also been shown in both nations towards a deeper partnership. At the same time, would you say that Korea and Japan can move beyond existing historical issues and realize comprehensive partnership, especially as middle powers?
Yes, Korea, Japan, it's a really, really important relationship. Japan is our closest neighbor, just across like a 1-hour flight. We reach Japan, and especially with the new administration, we have really been advancing a lot in developing and, well, I guess reinstating the good relationship that we've had before with Japan. And of course, there are historical differences. History is very loud, and profound in our part of the world. But we're not saying forget about history, but we're saying let's focus on the future. And I do think that with Japan, there are a lot of things that our nations can do together, especially in terms of making a free and open, prosperous Indo-Pacific. So our two leaders have already met, I think, 4 times this year, and I think there's more coming up. And I guess next week or so, they're going to have a trilateral, Korea, U.S., Japan. in the United States, a trilateral summit. So you can really see that the Korea and Japan were working really very well together nowadays, and hope to see more cooperation between us.
Thank you, Minister Im. He also thanked you for a very informative talk. Missed that when I posed the question. Amrita Saha, a master's student of International Relations and Security Studies at Rashtriya Raksha University in Gujarat, asks, while Korean companies like Hanwha have made ventures into the Indian defense market in the land domain, what are the areas of cooperations being explored by the Korean shipbuilding companies, given the fact that maritime security remains one of the key pillars of the Korean-Indian cooperation?
Yes, yes, that's a very important question. We have seen close Korea-India cooperation in the defense market, especially the K9 Vajra, which was actually showcased during the parade and during your National Day parade. And yes, shipbuilding is one of the strongest areas of Korea. And in shipbuilding, I do think there's a lot we can do together. But as I said, this is actually one of the areas that I do think that Korea and India can really make more exert more efforts to cooperate more closely. And when I said there's room for improvement, shipbuilding in areas of ship is actually one area that we can talk about. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Im. There are no more questions in the chat box or on YouTube. So if that's all right, I had a question of my own, if I can ask one. So what I was thinking about was there's this historical narrative and a precedent of the East Asian tigers, these economic miracles that were seen in the late 1900s. So is there an attempt to perhaps use that story, use that history in the new vision of the Indo-Pacific that Korea has? Because ASEAN, while an economic partner, might be a bit reticent to go beyond that. So how does Korea say deal with it or understand the presence of ASEAN in the Indo-Pacific?
So what we see ASEAN, how we picture ASEAN in our Indo-Pacific strategy. Okay. Yeah. Basically, ASEAN remains really an important region, important partner for us. As you recall, in the previous administration's New Zealand policy, it was basically ASEAN plus India. And ASEAN, and of course, there was a lot going on with ASEAN countries before that. But we've basically succeeded what we've done so far with ASEAN countries into our Indo-Pacific strategy. And we've come up with this is a holistic strategy for a vast area, as I said, in the Indian Ocean region, African eastern coast, the Pacific, all the way to the Pacific Islands, Southeast Asia, of course, in the middle. And we're now in the process of coming up with region-specific strategies. For Southeast Asia, we've come up with a strategy that's focused solely on Southeast Asia with the ASEAN countries. It's called CASI. So yes, Southeast Asia is really at the core of our Indo-Pacific strategy. We respect the importance of the centrality of ASEAN in our Indo-Pacific strategy, and yes, we do hope to cooperate with India. Also, as I mentioned, when we're talking about a minilateral, why not, with another Southeast Asian countries, Korea, India, and some other country. I don't know, for instance, Indonesia. Why not? I know that there's so many different kind of combinations that you can think of, and those different kind of combinations would all have these different advantages that we can reap from. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Im. Dr. Uttam, there seem to be no more questions in the chat box. So we can have a loose conversation between you and Minister Im while we wait for further questions.
Okay. Yeah, I think I learned a lot from the questions asked by the participants, and I think there is a great uh, commonality between the two countries, India and Korea, and our bilateral relations, they have improved a lot. However, as a person involved in the Korean studies from last 30 years, I see still that this goodness between the two countries, even going back to the ancient times when the Indian princess went and married in Korea, I think we can forge a special partnership between the two countries, and things can be moving much faster than what at the current level things are moving. So I think in that context, I would like to uh, ask Minister that whether we can have something like what the US and UK they have, something that can expedite our relationship to a much higher level, though we have good wishes from both sides, but like Korea Vietnam relationship moving in a different trajectory. So I think there needs to be done something that India-Korea relationship also can see another level of engagement.
Yes, Professor Otam, thank you for that. I agree with you 100%. Really, we need to go to the next level. Korea and India, there's so much that we share, history, culture. But for me too, I've been here 6 months now, and I can feel the gap. I'm thinking, why can't we do this and that like that the U.S. or UK is doing? It's come from Korea, and I actually have been reflecting upon myself too. When I was in Korea, I was conceptualizing the Indo-Pacific strategy and the importance, of course, of our partnership with India, but it's all in concepts. And that's my first time serving in India, and I see how things are on the ground here. And really, I do think that we really need to do more to upgrade our bilateral relations. And one of the things I think is missing is, more exchanges between our two people. Basically, you have to have more exchanges, more Indians coming to Korea to see what Korea is like, and vice versa. And India, especially, it's such a huge, it's like a continent. It would take, usually I'm here for 3 years, but it would take a diplomat 10, 20 years or more to actually get to know what India is all about. You're such a diverse country. So we really need more Koreans to come here to engage, make friends with India, to see what India has to offer, and vice versa. And that really is, that's one of the things I want to focus while I'm here as DCM. And that means, promoting tourism, promoting exchanges between schools, and these kind of exchanges and these kind of webinars, seminars where, we have this interaction to let them know what Korea is all about. So I think we really have to work a lot together to upgrade this. It's not like, okay, let's upgrade from a certain date. Let's say that Korea and India have now become this special blah 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 relationship, and then suddenly things just work out. It doesn't work that way. We need the grassroots. We need the basis, right? And I think that's really what's missing. If I compare our relationship, for instance, Korea-U.S. relationship, we have so many visits and so many, especially with think tanks and, our relation, Korea-Japan relationship, for instance, or Korea-Vietnam, with more exchanges. And I think we can do that between Korea and India. We have direct flights, almost every day. And Corona is over, and there's a lot of interest actually nowadays in India. And I don't know if you the young people, they watch the YouTube videos and reels, right? And there's this program in Korea where this famous Korean entertainer, he's traveling around India, and people are going crazy. They really want to come, and we've had a lot of inquiries from Korea saying that we want to come to India and see what India is like. So I think that's good, to really promote more exchanges, and that would contribute a lot to upgrading our relationship.
There's another question in the chat box, Dr. Uttam. Sugandha, a research assistant at the ICS, asks, considering Korea's unique journey from being among the world's poorest nations to becoming an OECD donor country, it would be valuable to learn about Korea's approach to sharing its developmental experiences with countries in the region. Are there particular sectors such as sustainable development, technology, transfer, trade, or investment where Korea envisions leveraging its success story to support the aspirations of fellow Indo-Pacific nations?
Oh, yes. So we have a unique narrative, a unique experience of national development. So that's actually a really important part of Indo-Pacific Strategy. There are a lot of aspiring nations in the Pacific region, small but big ocean nations like the Pacific Islands, and also here in the Indian Ocean region and so forth. But there are a lot of aspects. But me personally, I served in other developing countries before, but I do think one of the key areas that we can share our experiences is our how should I say, the importance of educating and training your people, and transformation of the rural areas, where usually the rural areas are the more underdeveloped. And we have this experience in Korea. Back in the 70s, we had the so-called new village movement. It's called Saemaul-Undong. And it was in the 70s where the rural areas of villages were really really underdeveloped, and we had this program of changing not just the physical appearance of the villages, but the mentality of the people, that things can change. And that really has contributed a lot to our economic national developments. And in that aspect, I think that Korea has a lot to share with other aspiring developing countries. Of course, these specific areas of fighting climate change and energy security, we can make that tailor-made to the needs of the different countries. But on top of that, I think what we can share is this whole process of what we went through, this physical and mental transformation that we had to go through back in the 70s and 80s. That's embodied in the so-called Saemaul-Undong. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Would you like to carry on?
Actually, one more thing. I think.
Oh, please.
One more thing. In terms of cooperating for the development of the global South, and that also is a good area where Korea and India can all cooperate together. India, of course, is now the voice of the global South, especially in light of the G20 summit. And India is very active in promoting development cooperation with other developing countries. Just recently, the external minister made this fantastic trip to East African countries. So I think Korea and India, we share this very unique narrative. India too, you are now on the verge of really taking off. You're very taken off, but you're like the fifth largest economy in the world, and you're growing and growing. And that actually is a good example to these other aspiring nations. In Korea too, our experience. So if Korea and India get together and work together somehow, and with the global South, I think it would be really worthwhile. One area that we can also work together.
I, I think listening to everybody, I have also one idea to talk about how actually the relationships, it can be between countries, between institutions. You need some kind of identify the people who can push the relationship, like movers and the shakers. Many entrepreneurs in India, in Korea, maybe because they don't find many kind of forums, but they can actually force some kind of very unique cooperation or cooperative mechanisms. So I think that's that kind of thing, that we don't go only for the formal institutions and their collaboration, but informally the people who have a lot of energy, the people who are entrepreneurs, innovators, and all this, if they can cooperate somehow, or they can find a forum or platform to cooperate, I think that can be also very important.
There are a couple of more questions. The first is from Chitranjan Gonjingban from the YouTube channel. He is a PhD candidate at the Center for East Asian Studies at JNU. He asks, has the Republic of Korea still reflected strength from its interventions, or is it keeping an arm's length between the state and chaebols these days in its geo-economic strategy? Sorry, you're muted, Minister.
Yes, well, for starters, it's a market economy in Korea. So there are industrial policies, especially in the 70s and 80s, where the government took an active part in implementing, planning and implementing these economic strategies and industrial policies. But now it's it's really a free market. It's business, they have their own interests. So of course the governments, along with the National Assembly, can nudge the companies to look at a certain direction and take certain actions. But like what's happening with other countries in the world, but state intervention, that's not really something that's happening. That is not feasible with Korean companies. That's yeah. So I don't think yeah, that's not happening.
Thank you, Minister Im. The next question is from Aman Verma from the Korean division at JNU. He asks, the previous regime of South Korea had the strategy of ambiguity on the Indo-Pacific. However, the current regime has adopted the strategy of clarity, that is in agreement with the US-American strategy. What factors have led to this shift?
Well, like I said, we had a very good, lively discussion when we're coming up with our Indo-Pacific strategy, and the most important part was a freedom pillar. It's a recognition of what we are, our basic identity, and how we came to be this developed, democratic, free nation. And it was really not that hard to come up with an answer. And that answer is, freedom is one of the core values that we have to uphold and promote. And that meaning upholding the rules-based international order, like I said. So that's really, it wasn't really that, I guess that was one of the commentaries. A lot of commentators said that there's been this radical shift in Korea's outward stance. But I guess in light of the fact that we pronounced this in the Pacific strategy, that was actually something very new compared to the past because we're not used to Korea is not used to going around and really stating out loud clearly what we would like to do, what our aspirations are, and that is why before or most of our strategies and initiatives revolve around the Korean Peninsula, how to deal with the North Korean threat, especially. But this Indo-Pacific strategy, of course, Indo-Pacific strategy, it includes obviously our immediate region, but it's more about Korea assuming a larger role in the Indo-Pacific region. And with that, we came to realization that what Korea can do and contribute is really to promote a rules-based international order, which we do think is the key to any nation who aspires to national development.
Thank you, Minister Im. A follow-up question from Naima Basu. She asks, you spoke about trilateral cooperation between India, Korea, and Japan. So what is South Korea's views on India's request to renegotiate the Indian-Korean free trade agreement?
Yes, that's actually been ongoing for a while. We do think it's about time to upgrade our free trade agreement between Korea and India. And negotiations are tough, especially trade negotiations. I was actually a long time ago, I was part of the Korea-US FTA negotiations team, and I can tell you that these trade negotiations are very tough and it takes time. And I know that the two sides have been working on this very hard, and hopefully we'll be able to reach a mutually beneficial agreement on upgrading our FTA. I have no doubt about that because we both share the same goal that the FTA needs an upgrading to further promote our trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Im. We still have about 15 minutes in hand, so we can keep this conversation going and just wait for more questions to pop up in the chat box or on YouTube.
Or I guess we could do it both ways if it's okay. I would love to listen to other participants' views, on all the various subjects that we discussed. So I'd be happy to listen to anyone's views and comments, if it's okay with you.
Of course, Minister Im. So we can definitely allow people to speak. We just have to give them the host's permission. And if anybody would like to speak, they can raise their hands and we can begin that process. In the meanwhile, while we wait, I did have a query about your retelling of how these free trade agreements are kind of ironed out and how the negotiations are really tough. When diplomats do sit together and try to hash out the specifics of agreements like this, what, I guess, do they have in mind as the core principles that they cannot perhaps negotiate on, and what they can perhaps give away to reach a mutual understanding? So how do they kind of balance that from a practitioner's perspective? And how do you come to a final agreement which satisfies both parties and then can be formalized?
Well, it's very hard to generalize how negotiations result in concrete outcomes, but in general terms, there's a country has their interests, so-called really core interests are A, B, and C. And B country's core interest is D, E, and F. Then we basically try to accommodate one big solution that addresses maybe A-1, B-1, D-1, E-1, and maybe sacrifice C and F. That's one combination. So as long as we come up with a compromise that satisfies us, A country 70%, 60%, B country 7% and 6%, that's great. That's how you come up with a trade deal. And if there's a will, there's a strong will to do that, there's always mere creative ways to come up with that kind of compromise. And sometimes, you could just get 55% of what you wanted. The other guy gets like 58%. And that could be good enough, given all the things that went through, then you have a deal. So it's that's the art of diplomacy, I guess. But Korea and India, we have this strong interest to upgrade our FTA, and that's really actually the most important, honestly, in any kind of deal. The strong will from both sides actually to get this done. Then you get it done one way or another. But if one side is kind of like in it, one side's like, yeah, we want this, but not that way, then you can never get a deal. But for whatever, I'm not, I don't participate in the India-Korea FTA negotiations. But from what I've heard and what I feel, there is definitely a strong willingness from both sides. So I do think positively, and diplomats used to. We are very optimists. We have to be optimists to be diplomats. We'll get a deal done. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister.
Hey.
Mr. Lim, you have been in India from last 6 months. What is the most important understanding you have derived from India's ongoing transformation? Means what has struck to your mind, which is very uniquely Indian, and you can have some view on that.
Yeah, what really struck me was, the transformation of Indian foreign policy, how proactive Indian foreign policy has become. Because many people, when you think about India, those people don't really know that much. At least they know that India used to be, with the non-aligned movement, and you're always kind of like, a step away. You don't really get, you don't get involved too much. That was how Indian foreign policy operated. But that's really in the history now. If you look at Indian foreign policy, it's really, you are now exerting leadership, global leadership on all these important issues, and in light of the change in the geopolitical, geoeconomics environments, you have become you're what India says. It really matters a lot. It really matters a lot. And you have really, I see the foreign policy of India now has completely transformed from the years of the so-called 70s, 80s. Like India, I think Prime Minister Modi himself characterized it sometime. Now there's no more hesitancy in your diplomacy, and I can really feel that. And that's really a huge feat. Because it's very hard to actually reorient something. There's always this inertia. We comfortable doing what we used to do, and if we step out of our comfort zone, it's very hard. You tend to look back and second guess what you're doing, and that's actually one of the challenges that I think Korea is also facing when we're implementing our Indo-Pacific strategy, because it's actually the first time ever that Korea actually has released such a comprehensive strategy, laying out our aspirations, what we believe in, and what we want to do. And really, that's a breakaway from all these past years of Korean diplomacy, where we're more focused on what's happening right now in our neighborhood because of the North Korean threat, obviously. So I feel the challenge on our side, and I see that Indian diplomacy has really overcome this challenge, and you've transformed into a global leader, and that's really impressive, and that's something that I think we need to learn from India. Did I sound too diplomatic? but really, I'm sincere in my remarks. I'm really sincere.
There is a new question in the chat box from retired Colonel Virendra Sai Verma. He asks, how do you manage people-to-people relations amongst divided families like India and Pakistan?
Yeah, this also actually, of course, the partition. You read it in your history books, obviously. But I come here and I see in the movies, I interact with people. I see the news, of the love story news recently in the papers, not just one couple, but many couples. And really, this is, and you used to be, just one entity, right? Pakistan, India, before 47, it was just, this big India, right? It wasn't, and it was like us, Korea. We've been in Korea all the time. Professor Otamino very well. You've been in Korea, and it's a very recent thing that we got divided. It's after our independence, and we didn't choose to be divided. They chose for us. We said no, but it's kind of like India too. You didn't want the partition. Well, I guess some wanted partition, but anyways, it was largely it's not us that wanted the division, and so we have the same heartbreaking, very sad stories, and it's even harder for Koreans in the South to meet Koreans in the North, separated families. It's really hard because the North Korean regime is really one of the most closed regimes in the history of the world, and you don't know if your relative is alive or not. There's no way of knowing. You have to hire some kind of like a Mission Impossible agent to find out if your relative is alive or not. It's crazy, So I can identify that too, the pain and the suffering of families divided, and that's something that as a Korean, I come here and I can really relate to that too, and it's sad, the families shouldn't be divided, that's you're related, families and friends.
Thank you, Minister Im. I would like to now invite any concluding remarks from Dr. Uttam or Minister Im before we bring the session to a close. Oh, sorry, before that, there is another question. It's from Sugandha. She asks, how has the growing popularity of cultural phenomena like K-pop and Korean entertainment contributed to strengthening people-to-people relations between Korea and other countries?
Yeah, that's actually really a huge driver for promoting people-to-people exchange. Korean music, Korean entertainment. I can see that it's very popular here in India, and vice versa. The Koreans now, the RRR was really, especially the song Natu Natu was, all Koreans know now, Natu Natu Natu, everybody sings that. And so we should have more exchanges culturally too, and that really is one of the biggest drivers of making our two people get closer. You know, so it's really important.
With that, I think we'll close the questions, and I'll invite any closing remarks from either of the speakers, and then we can conclude the session.
Yeah, I think getting to know, and what many questions, they have some underlying meaning, that cultural commonality, K-pop, cultural interaction, and all this. I think it is very important that wider group of people, means people to people, they should get to know each other. The problem of language, the problem of distance, and all these are there. But as a teacher of the Korean Studies program here in Jawaharlal Nehru University, now I see a very clear shift. Many students who got to know about Korea, they know Korean culture not because of they are part of the Korean language program or some other programs. No, independent of any institutional arrangement, they have got to know about Korea, Korean culture, and their interest to Korea is very genuine. And I think that beginning is very important. That many people now, many students, they want to learn Korean culture, they want to study Korea, not because they were part of a BA program or master's program, but they are coming from nowhere and learning about Korea, getting to know Korea. I think that is very important. And to promote all this, we need all kind of interactions at all levels possible, and that can make the two Asian countries to come much more closer. What I can feel, that this is the golden age of Asia. It is up to the Asian leadership how they organize it much better. But I think this is the time for Asia to understand that we have so much potential. We can not only talk about Asia, but we can change the direction of the world politics, world economy, and so on. So I think in that context, it is very important between the Asian countries to know, understand each other, not through anybody else, but with the direct interaction. And I think today's talk about the Indo-Pacific and how Korea is now first time, as Minister told, is open, came with the policy paper, not reacting only to some kind of developments, but came with the policy paper. This is Korea and what Koreans they want. They want not only to limit their activities in the region, but they want to reach out beyond the region through the Indo-Pacific. And I think that is very important development and very important message that we have learned today. So I invite for final comment from Minister, and then I think then the session we can conclude.
Yes, well, thank you once again. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very important seminar, Wednesday seminar, and it also gave me a really good opportunity to reflect again on the importance of Korea-India partnership and the importance of further upgrading our relationship to realize our common goal of making a free and open, prosperous Indo-Pacific. And I really do think that these kind of interactions are one of the cornerstones to upgrade our relationship, to have more exchanges between Korea and India. So once again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and have a good rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Before I bring the session to a complete close, I would like to read out Professor Alka Acharya's comments, who's also the director of the ICS. She says it has been a truly comprehensive discussion and it brought in very interesting ideas. She thanks Minister Im and Dr. Uttam for their presence. She would also like to take these thoughts and further in another discussion. So we have now come to the end of today's Wednesday seminar. I would like to thank Minister Sang-Woo Im and Dr. Jitendra Uttam for taking the time out of their busy schedules to hold a fascinating conversation. Your discussion of Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy offered rare insight into the policy and possible futures for the region. The recording of today's discussion will be available on the ICS YouTube platform. At the ICS, we have been conducting seminars every Wednesday for 4 decades, and the information related to them is available on the ICS website and our social media. You can also follow our Twitter page and subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you.